You are listening to a Modern Nonprofit Podcast, a podcast for leaders of today's nonprofits. We focus on the most pressing issues in a modern nonprofit, from grant writing and fundraising to back office administration like accounting. If you are looking for tips and hacks to make your nonprofit more modern and intentional, you've come to the right place. I'm your host, Tosha Anderson. I've worked with hundreds of nonprofits over many years in different capacities. First as an auditor, then a CFO of a nonprofit, and now I'm a CPA that owns the Charity CFO, an accounting firm working exclusively with nonprofit organizations. I'm passionate about trying to make the work of nonprofits even easier through the most modern practices I've learned from some of our most successful clients. Keep listening. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of a Modern Nonprofit Podcast, or in this case today with my new friend Kristina, not a nonprofit, right? So Kristina McKean, you are a guest today, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some work that you're doing with, I guess we'll call it an organization named the Elephant Project. But Kristina, I'm really excited to talk about this today because you're doing mission-based work in a way that's unique to you for a cause that's important to you, but you're not actually a nonprofit. So first, I want to say thank you for coming on and sharing a little bit more about your story, about the work that you're doing and what led you here. So thank you for joining us, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'm really excited to be chatting with you today.
So for those that are interested in the Elephant Project, check out the website. I'm on it. Super adorable little stuffed animals, theelephantproject.com. But Kristina, for those that don't know what the Elephant Project is, tell us what is the background of the Elephant Project? How did you get started with this, and what are you trying to do?
So I started basically, what originally started the project is I was in Thailand and I saw a baby elephant begging in Bangkok in the street and was really distraught about it. And it was over 23 years ago. So it was a long time ago. And I came back to Santa Barbara where I live, and I was like, what? This is wrong. It was actually before social media. So I wasn't sure even what to do about it or how I could help and make a difference. It just was something that I felt really strongly that I needed to help them. So I started signing petitions and protesting like the circus. And I just felt like it wasn't enough for me. Like I needed to do something else. And I had a background in product development and design. I used to work in the Gap, and my category was really like the tweens. And at the time that I had two daughters also who were playing with stuffed animals. And one day I was like, I can do something more. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can make a stuffed animal that would help create funds and awareness and teach children at a really young age about the plight of the elephant. And so that's kind of how that, really brief description, how all that got started.
So that's interesting. You saw a cause, you thought, how can I do something about it? And you used some of your background, or a lot of your background, probably working at the Gap for the design of it. So on your website, you're selling, these stuffed animals. And tell us a little bit more about how you set this up. And, you sell these stuffed animals and then they go to help the elephants. And in what way is that?
So I started just because, it was just me basically, and it was something I knew how to do. I tell everybody who wants to get involved in any cause, I was in an interview last week and they're like, what can we do? And I'm like, there's so many fights to fight right now. Like just pick one that you're passionate about. You don't have to start a stuffed animal. I mean, there's a million ways to get involved. It just was something I knew how to do. So anyway, I started these stuffed animals because it was a way for me, was something I knew how to do. It was kind of fun. And I worked with these organizations, one in Africa, which is the Sheldrake Wildlife Trust, which is super well known. And I've known them for years and have been part of a lot of their functions. And then I also work with the Elephant Nature Park in Chiang Mai, Thailand, which I just got back from. And they're an incredible organization that takes the elephants that have been abused or from riding camps. And we try to teach people, not to ride elephants because they go through this horrible torture. So it's a way of exposing the different needs that the elephants have. And of course, they're very expensive to keep and care of, and also to rescue so they don't get sold to zoos and circuses. So, I started with just a stuffed elephant, but it's become, a huge part of my work is advocacy for elephants.
Awareness.
Yeah. So, it started as one thing and now it's kind of pivoting towards where I'm doing more work on, making, helping people raise awareness about their plight and what people can do to make a difference. So that's sort
Gotcha.
of it's taken me on.
I love that. So, can I ask a weird question? What made you not just think there's this cause, I need to do more about it, let me start a nonprofit? You chose a different path, and that's creating merchandise, selling merchandise in a for-profit entity, selling that merchandise and then giving those proceeds away to help these elephants. It's a different path. Which I'm excited and interested about because I tell people all the time, can you do your work without creating all of the bureaucratic compliance nonsense that a nonprofit is subject to, which sometimes is a distraction. If you talk to many founders, like, I was just trying to do this thing, right? I just wanted to help the community, or in your case, these animals. And now I've created this whole monster that is almost a distraction away from what I'm trying to do. So help me understand, or anybody listening, what made you go that path than the typical path of like, let me start a nonprofit and get a board and do all these fundraisers, and you chose something different.
Yeah, I actually wasn't really interested in starting a nonprofit. I mean, I just wanted to, I didn't even really know how to do that, to be honest. And so
Mhm.
when I started it, I was like, this is what I'm good at. I know what I'm good at. I'm good at creating
Mhm.
the design of stuffed animal. Like that is my,
Mhm.
and through sort of the elephant, it's become my voice to help them, and not saying
Mhm.
down the line I might do the nonprofit route, but right now
Sure.
I feel like you can spread yourself so thin, especially when you're starting your own business, whether it's a
Mhm.
nonprofit or LLC or whatever it is, because there's only so many hats that you can wear and
Yeah.
then just any of them. So I
Mhm.
was like, I'm focusing on these stuffed animals. And I felt like that was a really good path for me because I feel like if I would have tried to do everything, it would have just been overwhelming and exhausting. And I think that's what a lot of
Mm.
people try at the beginning is to do everything. And then
Mhm.
like a sense of failure because it's just impossible.
I love that. Rather that you focused your energy and channeled your energy on the experience you had and what you were good at, and just figuring out a way to leverage that to make money to help, you know, you know, create awareness and advocacy for these animals. Rather than, I think, exactly what you just described, that a lot of people go into, say they have a background in education or healthcare or whatever it is. Now they realize they're running an entire business, a whole operation, that wasn't really what they were setting out to do. And then, as you had mentioned, spread out so thin, and you realize, hey, I was an educator by trade or by training, and now I'm a professional fundraiser. Now I'm a grant writer. Now I have to develop a board, skills that you just don't have any idea what you're doing. And then you have to get up to speed really quickly. And I find that it's spread way too thin and a recipe for burnout pretty significantly. And I tell people this all the time. People reach out to me and say, hey, Tasha, I'm thinking about starting a nonprofit. And I always ask, tell me a little bit more about why you're doing that, and tell me a little bit more about what you're hoping to do. And I always ask the question, is there a way for you to do this without necessarily being a nonprofit? Can you, like you've set up, Christina, a model in which you can just give the proceeds away, right? And if you spend money to create this sort of awareness or to support these organizations, then in many ways you're not really always creating a tax consequence. So I think sometimes people think, well, it's tax free and all this. I think there's ways around that. So talk to a tax planner or your accountant on ways that you can set up a structure that it doesn't create all of these expectations and roles and responsibilities and compliance and all of these things, but you're still able to do the good work. And it sounds like too, Christina, you've partnered with some other organizations, maybe not formally, but maybe informally, on how can you share their message or their work with the work that you're doing. Is that the case?
Yeah, I mean, I picked just a couple. Also, that was like really key. I think for me, rather than I get a ton of people requesting for help, but it's really important for me also to vet these
Yeah.
organizations, make sure I have really good relationships and I know exactly where the money's going. And especially the one in Thailand, I work really closely with. I really love the woman who founded it, like Luck Thailand.
Mm.
So I do think it's important to start small. And even though I always had a huge vision for it, I think I
Mhm.
was super focused on what I actually could do. And I was like, this
Mhm.
is what I'm really good at. I can't be, volunteering in the field, which I would love to. And I just got back from doing that. But I was like, I have to stay here. I have kids and a family. And,
Yeah.
what is stick to? Because I think sometimes people are like, well, they do it if I can go and like live with the elephants. But I'm like, there's so much you can do from
Mm.
here. Even if you don't even start an organization, you can use your voice. You can start slowly. It doesn't have to be some
Mhm.
huge entity right away.
I love that. It brings something to my mind, when people think about, what can they do to support causes, that I think the obvious is either their time or their money. And sometimes it's their skills. And sometimes it's their skills. I've thought about this sometimes, like maybe your skill is a talent in how to make money, create resources so that you can give it away to these organizations that are also being operated and ran by people that are able to give their time, right? Or their other skills. So let's talk a bit more about the elephants and the distribution. So you're selling them online on your website, adorable little elephants. Tell us a little bit more about how you get this out, the message out. How do you get people to know that these elephants exist? I think you leverage social media quite a bit for this, right?
Definitely. I mean, the thing too is, I have been in business for 5 years, but it's a 24/7 business because
Yes.
if you are in charge. I tell people like, make sure you're passionate and really care about what you do because it is. People are like, you've been so lucky. I'm like, definitely been so lucky, but I've also worked really hard. I mean,
Right,
in
right.
the beginning, I would send like 100 emails a week, and I'm like, what are the odds that like one person would respond? And slowly it worked. And I have interns that work for me, and I'll say like, eventually someone connects with you, or someone, you just have to be sort of resilient and just never give up kind of attitude. I think if you
Mhm,
have good intentions and you're trying to help the universe, like the universe
mhm,
actually does kind of help you a little bit.
mhm,
But I
mhm,
think leveraging social media, but also talking to everybody you could possibly talk to about your
mhm,
project, align yourself with people who are doing similar things.
mhm,
There's a lot of ways in networking, and sometimes you think that somebody might not be able to help you, but as long as you talk about it, you never know
mm.
who they might know. I mean, I
Yeah.
literally talk to everybody, and shockingly, some people that I would never think would be able to help, like, they're like, oh, my mom's friend is whatever. So I think that's also important. And then you just have to really put yourself out there continuously and not get frustrated, because there'll be times when you don't make any sales, and it just takes time and effort, I
Mhm.
think. So
So what's been your strategy with getting the word out? You had mentioned sending emails out and you've used social media. What specific things do you find have worked for you and the Elephant Project? Is it partnering with like influencers? Is it just convincing other companies to support your product? What has worked really well for you?
the online stuff works really great. And, I've asked a ton of like celebrities and influencers
Mm,
if they would share the story. And a lot of them have, which is great
mm,
because I think a lot of people do want to help, but they don't have the
mhm,
time or resources to
mm,
do that. And like just a simple post or share, like can
mm,
really increase sales. And then, sending samples out, going to your
mm,
local boutiques, like, and saying what the mission is and
mm,
why that I think is really helpful. I think the online market, I've tried, print and online is definitely, where I think the most sales have come through. But
mhm,
um, yeah, I think trying every option, because some things that have worked really well for me, for other people I know in business, it doesn't. But I think online is probably the best way to go. And Instagram is huge too, because so
sure,
many people
sure.
are on Instagram and, TikTok also, which I sadly am going down that road because I have teenage daughters to help me. But yeah.
Yes. Well, I was going to ask that too, because I think if people are listening, like, hey, I have merchandise, I would love to take it out to the market. I don't know how to do that. Obviously, you do have a background in product design, but how did you figure this out? Did you hire somebody? Did you just figure it out yourself? Use your daughters? Like, how did you set
Um,
up this platform to sell and then distribute these animals?
well, I actually really knew who my market was, which I think is
Mm,
super important. I
mm,
knew they would do really well in high-end boutiques. I did try some different markets out, which I think is really important in the beginning, just to
mm,
see who this is really you're targeting. And once I figured out who I was targeting, then I kind of just like narrowed in. And
mm.
I do have a background in that, and I used to do interior design. So I did kind of know that. And I think that's important when you're studying any business. Like, don't try to
Mhm.
do something completely out of the norm or something you're not comfortable with. And it doesn't even have
Mm.
to be, it could be whatever you specialize in, whatever your talent or is, then you kind of focus on that. But I think that
Yeah.
I really knew that market so well. that it was not as far as a reach for me. So I tell people, like, try to align yourself with people that are doing similar things, what they have done that have
Mhm.
worked. Join any sort of group too that for entrepreneurs or people starting
Mhm.
businesses. That's an amazing resource as well.
I love that. Knowing who your market is, right? And I think that's the key with digital marketing. I mean, certainly I like to joke with people, I'm an accountant by trade, but also by owning a business, you have to by default become pretty savvy in marketing, especially digital marketing if you're working either nationally or globally, right? And there's so much opportunity if you understand what your market is. And the benefit of digital marketing, especially, it's so, I don't want to say super easy, but it's you can really fine tune your searches or your audiences and how your information shows up in the right place in front of the right people with the right consultants and marketing firms to help you do that. So it helps that you are able to already kind of thinking when you design this what your audience is. And for anybody listening, if you have merchandise or even if you don't have merchandise, just your cause, right? Your mission. Who is this going to appeal to, and how do you get in front of those people? There's a whole world and whole algorithms and searchability
Yeah.
that I've had to learn how to figure out. Despite being an accountant, I've certainly had to understand, and I think any business owner needs to understand that in this modern day. So you talked a little bit about kind of reaching out to people. I think my last question is really just understanding your communication plan and what you were able to share with people, and whether it's the emails or the elevator pitches or just on social media or your branding, like how you talk about what you're doing and why that's important for nonprofits to really hone in on that and make sure that that's clear. Tell us how you were able to tackle that.
Well, I was going to say too, with my marketing and stuff, I was doing my own Instagram, and then I had someone help me for a little bit. And I just found that it wasn't as successful because it wasn't
Mhm.
my voice. And even like I'll go back on some of my posts and like, oh my God, I spelled that incorrectly or whatever. But I think
Mhm.
people really like that it's like this grassroots, organic
Mhm.
organization. Like they really appreciate it.
Mhm.
And people like to kind of root for the underdog. And so
Mhm.
I think like if it's your own voice and you're really passionate about it, people become passionate too. I mean, I've been so
Mhm.
passionate about what I'm doing, and people are like, they want to kind of like jump on that bandwagon, and also giving
Yeah.
hope too, rather
Yeah.
than like, this is a dire situation. There's nothing we can do about it.
Mhm.
That, there's hope. We can actually make a change. This is possible. I think for anybody starting a business, it's like you just have to show that you're passionate about it, that you can make a difference. And
Yeah.
the best advice I have, and I've said this a lot in different interviews, is I was starting my business and I saw a friend at the grocery store and he's like, how's it going with the Alpine project? And I said, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, it's great. No, none of us know what we're doing. We're all making
Yes.
it go along. And that gave me such like relief and freedom to know like this is a process. And like I
Mhm.
will probably fail in a lot of this, but I know what I'm doing is like what I should be doing. So I'll
Mhm.
figure a way to work out. And not everything has been successful, but I've
Right.
put so much hard work in it and I've been so passionate about it that I think like in the end you end up um, learning from your mistakes and moving on to a better place. That's
Mhm.
great.
I love that when you said, "I don't know." That is probably surprising, would be when you say that to people, but it's the truth. I tell people that I am one lesson learned after another. Any
Right.
entrepreneur out there that plans that tries to pretend that everything is working as planned and they know what they're doing, they're not. They don't, right? So I think that's validating. Whether you're a for-profit or a nonprofit business, we're just doing the best that we can and figuring it out as we go. So that's certainly validating. And I love what you said about your voice. It reminds me of a lesson learned that I had, that if you're selling things online or you're creating a voice online, that's not the same kind of writing as like, I'm thinking academic writing. If you're writing a letter or writing some sort of report or something like this, right? And I remember I redid my website. I was like proud of it, and I talked to a marketing expert, And he said, Tasha, when I talk to you, I have a totally different impression of who you are, what you're trying to do, than when I read your website. It's just a complete disconnect. And people like you because of you, and they like your voice and that authentic, relatable, personality of yours versus what I'm reading. It just seems very academic and very formal, right? And there needs to be a better bridge between that. And so I like when you said, that your social media, when you had somebody help you, it wasn't really in your voice. And for you, it probably especially sticks out. But as you mentioned, it wasn't as successful as when you were doing it, right? So people were able to see that, and um, you can't pretend to have that enthusiasm, right? And who's going to have that enthusiasm more than the founder or owner of a business? And certainly that comes through that enthusiasm. That gets people excited and energized about what you're doing. So I love that. It just really was a lesson learned for me to be authentic in your communication, even online, and understanding that your presence online is very intentional, and should not be considered super formal and super. I just keep thinking of the word academia, right? Everything has to be super proper, and all this. It's like you have to make it to where people are interested in reading it, right? So if it was too formal, it's just not going to hit well with everybody. So
Definitely. Yeah, you have to make it your own voice. And people like that. Like they want that. So much more interesting, I think.
yeah, I completely agree. So, Christine, this has been such an interesting little reflection on your path. But before we end this conversation, I want to talk if you're interested in purchasing an elephant to benefit the Elephant Project. What is the best way to follow along with either just your social media, what you're doing in your journey, and then also how we can purchase the elephants online, if that's the best way?
Yes. So it's the elephantproject.com is
Okay.
my website. And then Instagram is the Elephant Project Official, and the Elephant Project on Facebook too. But I'm trying to be more active on there, but I'm not as active.
Let's look at
On Instagram. And then my site is the best way. And if you sign up too, we regularly have like deals and stuff that we email out. So
Perfect. Well, thank you again, Christina. This has been super helpful for anybody listening. Head on over to the Elephant Project, buy one of these adorable little elephants to help the real elephants in the world. Christina, thank you again for joining us. This has been super interesting conversation and a different take on, I think, what we normally talk about, which is starting nonprofits and why you should or shouldn't. So thank you for sharing your story and the success, and hopefully continued success in the work that you're doing.
thank you. It's great to be on.
Great. See you soon. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to a Modern Nonprofit podcast powered by the Charity CFO. If your nonprofit is needing help with accounting or bookkeeping, head on over to thecharitycfo.com to find information on the work we are doing with other nonprofits. If you found this information helpful, please give us a 5-star rating on your podcast streaming platform so other nonprofit leaders can find us. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next episode.